He said, "Whose fault is this?" And I was like, "I don't know, not me." Welcome to the Monarch Experience. I am your host, Mr. Ancona. Thank you for listening to another episode. I think this is the big 3-0. Oh my goodness. How did I not plan something more extravagant than this? I should have had streamers and cake. Well, either way, happy 30th to the Monarch Experience. 30 episodes, not 30 years. I hope, oh my goodness, imagine if we got 30 years. We're only on year 3. We got 27 left to go. But I am your host, Mr. Ancona, and here at the Monarch Experience podcast, we are giving students the platform to voice their opinions about what matters most to them. And today, what matters most to them is not the grades. That doesn't sound like proper English. But today, we are talking about how grades don't matter. And I am so pumped. This has been an episode that I cannot even believe has gone over my head or it's made it through this long. Because if for students that know me, this is it. This is everything that I believe in life and in teaching. But we'll get there. We'll have plenty of time to unpack this. Before we talk with 3 amazing students about how grades aren't important and grades are not everything and all of that stuff, we're trying to do 2 new things here at the Monarch Experience. Numero uno, see how multicultural we are? Numero uno, we are trying to have a redesign of the logo. We're going to be doing a contest of some sort. Information will be presented and pushed out to the world. Not the world, only Memorial. And basically the gist of it is going to be as simple as this. Redesign the logo. Done. And then numero dos is leave a voice message. So it's been almost a full year of 2020. And I'd like to return it. I am good. No, thank you. This product has been defective. It no longer works. But there are good things that come from 2020. So obviously, instead of us focusing on all the things that are understandably so negative, so divisive, what I would like for students to do is for you to go to anchor.fm and click on the leave a voice message button and share some good news. I don't care what it is. Share some good news that has either happened to you, your sports team. Obviously, we won't be hearing from any Jets fans. Your family, in school, out of school, whatever it may be. Send a voicemail to the Monarch Experience. Keep it to about 30 seconds or less. And share with us some good news, something you're proud of, something you're excited for, something you're excited about. And we will have it aired, posted. It will be on future episodes of the Monarch Experience as we move forward. So share some good news or else. And I'll be the first one to share some good news of 2020. I get to still podcast. There, done. All right, so today I am multiple people, but we are joined today by 3 amazing students, 1 former returning student, and we're going to start with Danielle. Danielle, you've been on 1 episode?
Yeah, 1 episode.
1 episode, yeah. So Danielle, welcome back to the Monarch Experience.
Thank
when
you
you thought you'd get rid of me, I pull you right back in. That's my Pacino. That's my Pacino. Danielle, you have anything you want to plug? Anything that's going on in your life?
Marlborough High School Theater Society is putting on a Seussified Christmas Carol on December 18th and 19th over Zoom. So if you were to Google Marlborough High School Theater Society, you would find our Facebook page, and there's a link to our website. And eventually there should be ticket information on said website, which will be linked to our Facebook. So if y'all are interested, I'm like such a typical theater kid, like, hey, come see my show. You remember back during Footloose, Mr. Ancona, I was literally writing it in big letters on the board.
Yes, every day.
Yeah, every day, yes. So, of course, this is a show we're trying to give back to the community and everything. So if you would like to see the show, anyone who's listening, tickets will be there.
Awesome,
Nice.
Danielle. It is so good to have you back. It is so great to chat with you. Tarun, say hi to our audience.
Hi, audience.
Mason is returning from the last in-person episode that we did of the Monarch Experience. And you may remember Mason from the 2020 baseball season preview, which obviously everything we did in that episode, Mason, did not end up happening. And none of it was accurate.
Yep.
Although, didn't you pick the Dodgers to go to the World Series?
Yeah, I picked the Dodgers, but I picked the Yankees to win it.
Me too. I had the bold prediction of Yankees over Dodgers in a clean sweep. Woof. Totally wrong. Totally wrong.
I put Yankees Dodgers, but I didn't put a sweep. Like I just put they were gonna win.
Yeah, I try to like flex my most like shock DJ or like shock radio host where I was like, it's going to be a sweep. Obviously, I was wrong. Well, it is so great to have the three of you here at the Monarch Experience. And what's kind of cool about this is like the first episode we've ever done with Memorial alumni and current students. So we are bridging the gap. We are bringing everyone together. Awesome. I'm so pumped. And I'm so pumped because today we are focusing on the idea of how grades don't matter. So the title, I think the working title is actually going to be like grades don't matter. You know, people who are listening to this right now, you're clicking the button on anchor.fm or Spotify or iTunes or whatever, and you're like, grades don't matter. And before we dive into really like what we mean by this and Danielle, Mason, and Tarun breaking down kind of like their individual perspectives as well as mine, we're not saying that grades don't matter at all. That's a catchy title to get you to want to listen to the episode. We're going to be focusing on how grades aren't the only thing or the number one priority. And I really feel strongly about that. I don't believe that grades should be your number one priority as a student, but they are important, right? It is a way for teachers and admin and school districts to be able to like get a snapshot of data in a really, really quick and accessible way. So before people read the title, listen to the episode, and then get like their thumbs like furiously attacking me on Snapchat or like keyboards are lighting on fire across Marlboro because they're like, I disagree with you, you're a fool. Just scale it back a second. Our focus is that they shouldn't be the focus of everything you do in school, that there's more important things, but they do matter to an extent to some people, and rightfully so. We understand that. Now that we've got this disclaimer out of the way, let's crap all over grades. All right, so I guess the easiest way to start here is what is the biggest stress for students in school? It's been a long time since I've been a student. Tarun, biggest stress for students in school?
Probably grades and like pressure, I guess. Because like parents, like if you want to play on your Xbox when you get home, you're gonna have to get like good grades. Because if you are like not studying, then that's like not good for your learning. But it's also the student just wants to play on whatever they're doing.
Yeah, Tarun, I hear you. So is the stress that goes along with it, or is that like pressure? Is it because of like grades are the center of that pressure?
Yeah.
Cool. Mason, biggest stress for students in school?
I also agree that it's grades, but it's also like getting assignments due on time, and like also adding on to what Tarun was saying, like if you don't get a good grade, then your parents will be disappointed in you, and then next time they're gonna make you study, and then you won't have enough time to like do what you want to do.
Oh man, isn't that the worst when they're disappointed? You're like, could you stop being disappointed? Could you just be mad? Can you yell? Can you take my April O'Neil action figure and break her legs? Yeah, Dad, I'm still scarred from that. Thanks. But disappointed. That's the worst, right? Danielle, biggest stress. I've shared too much. Biggest stress. This episode is going to go right off the rails. It's going to become like a therapy session. What biggest stress for students in school?
I'm going to say, I think it's also probably grades. I think that's something that not only are you really putting that pressure on yourself or, your own reasons. Like, for example, if you're a high school student, I see this a lot. Like, you really want to get into this college. et cetera, et cetera. But there's also that stress from your parents, like Tarun said, but also, you know, teachers who you want to have good relationships, as well as friends who, like Mason and Tarun said, you know, if you fail a test, you're not going to be able to play Fortnite or Minecraft or whatever it is with your friends. And then they're going to be like, what you doing, dude?
All right. So obviously 3 for 3, the biggest stress for students in school, it sounds like everything is either grades or things that kind of surround or build off of grades. So I kind of started realizing, or kind of, obviously I've realized this since like I was in school. And I realized this even more so as soon as I started teaching, how much stress students put on themselves, or parents, how much pressure parents put on students to achieve good grades and all that. But so it wasn't probably until I'd say maybe 4 or 5 years ago where it kind of was like this spiritual awakening, where, you know, I've been guilty of it, where I talk about grades, like you're going to do poorly on this and then your grade's going to suffer. And it didn't start kind of dawning on me. I don't know exactly when or where or how it happened, but I made a conscious decision on a back to school night, which was dangerous, to denounce the overall importance, or to stop talking or making the focus of our conversation about grades. And I definitely was sweating a lot, because I'm like, okay, we haven't even gotten through like a month of school yet. And I'm standing up now in front of a bunch of adults that are older than me, and they're my kids' parents. And I'm going to try to tell them confidently that grades don't matter. I'm going to try to tell them that, and then immediately try to make my next point before they like jump up and like body slam me through a table. And basically this story, I think, in this podcast kind of has, for me at least, has to start there, because that was a really big moment of growth for me, where I ended up telling the parents that night that I felt like if we're making our focus only on the grade or the goal, more on that analogy later, that we're kind of being really short-sighted. We're looking at things as just like, let me just achieve this grade and then be done with it. And then that grade tends to define my self-worth as a student. And that's not always good, because we're always thinking like, oh, I can do better. And basically the conversation went really well. I had a parent come up to me after and was just like, I really agree with all the things you said. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. Because I thought he was going to choke slam me. But we had this really amazing conversation. I remember less of what I said to the parents and more of what this conversation with this father and I had, which he said, whose fault is this? And I was like, I don't know, not me. But he was like, no, really, like, whose fault is this? Because he's like, you know, as parents, everything you said is so true. We put this stress on them. We only touch base with our kids about their grades, not about the learning. Especially in 8th grade, the conversation probably, and you guys could speak to this, so you tell me your thoughts. He said, you know, it's not like I'm asking my son or daughter, like, what did you learn today? It's more of like, did you get all your work done? What's your grade? And then like, that's kind of the extent of the conversation at this age. You guys agree with that?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I mean, and obviously we're painting with broad strokes here, right? There may be some really amazing parents, not that your parents aren't amazing, but like there may be some, you know, like parents that are having these really, really deep connective conversations about like, this is the skill. Like, what skill did you learn? Oh, that's interesting. Like, where do you think that could be helpful in your life? But realistically, parents are busy. So he asked, is it the parents' fault because we don't like delve deeper into the conversation about like what skills they're learning? Or is it the school's fault because that's really all they use to assess and to do placement and to really look at the students? That's all they do. And then the district stresses that out to the parents and the communities, and then the parents kind of have to buy into that. So it's like this vicious cycle. And he was like, or is it the teachers? And it was just this really great conversation where I was like, I remember just looking at him and asking like, I don't know the answer. Like I felt like I needed to have the answer. And he was like, no, I don't know the answer either. But I just think it's interesting to try to see where it starts, or which one of those 3 parties, schools, parents, or teachers, could like resist that or fight back on that. That's so extreme, but like where they can kind of like change the dynamic of the conversation. So that's kind of where all of this started. And now, ever since then, back to school night, to my students, probably like almost on an every other week basis, I'm constantly trying to reinforce the idea that like your grades aren't everything. And in fact, those people who've either had me as a teacher, who are listening, or currently here, or currently have me as a teacher, you've either seen or you will see that in order to have a conversation about that number, it has to be like, what skills can I show improvement in? And can I then build off those skills? Because then I could answer that question. Can't answer the question of like, what can I do to get a 90? I don't know, score one more point. It's just a number. I don't know the answer to that. Basically, my argument has been, and I tell my students' parents, if you're reaching out to me about an assessment, let's make it about what skills that I struggle on, what skills can I do better, what skills do I need to refine? Because then if we focus on the skills, the grade will ensue. The grade that you want will be there. That's the result of focusing on the skills. If the only concern is, what can I do to get a 90? Well, a 90 or all of those, that final average is built up of so many different assessments that are assessing so many different skills that the answer would almost have to be like 17 paragraphs long. So in thinking about how to make sense of this to a wider audience, this is not just students listening to this. It's not just current students or former students. It's like this, we're downloaded in 35 states across the country. We're downloaded in like 20 countries. I think we're at 20 now. So, we're move over Pitbull. I'm Mr. Worldwide. Oh God. So I had an analogy that I will go with. And those of you who know me know that I am either really great at analogies or I suck at analogies. So hopefully this one is the former. So I will share my personal goals. So I am fitness and weightlifting has been something that has been an enormous part of my life for a long time. And as I get older, it just continues to grow in importance. So for me, I look at the grade as your goal, GG. It's a very nice, easy alliteration to remember. And I think of the skills as your applications or the things you're doing to get you to that goal. So for me, fitness is a huge part of my life. I have a new personal goal. I'm trying to hit a max deadlift of 400 pounds. So if you are trying to get to this goal, you can't just keep doing that. I can't keep loading up 400 pounds on the floor and then try to pull it. I can't like just chug an extra cup of coffee and be like, pull harder, right? Because parents will say the same thing, try harder. And you're like, well, but I'm struggling with this skill. I'm struggling to get to this goal of an 85. I'm struggling to get to this goal of a 90. And you can't just pull harder. You have to work on smaller things on the side, accessory things, or in my case, accessory lifts that will help strengthen weaker areas of your body or of that skill that you are working on in whatever subject it might be. So for me, it's you're trying to actually figure out ways. And if I'm going to hit 400 pounds, like I'm never going to just keep loading up the bar and then just keep trying to pull it. I have to work on where's my weaknesses. Is it my hamstrings? Is it lockout? Is it getting it off the floor? Like where am I struggling to make this thing happen? And then if I rectify those areas of weakness, then I might have a chance of attaining that goal. But I think that unfortunately students a lot of times, they focus on like whatever goal they have, and that's all they do. They go, I want to get a 90. I want to get honor roll. It's like, okay, cool. What are you doing to get there? I don't know. I want to get honor roll. I want to get a 90. Okay, so like, what are you doing to fortify those weaknesses or those gaps in your ability to help you? And the answer is always, I don't know. I don't know. What analogies can you guys think of that? Because I could think of like 10 other ones. Like I could think of even like if you're trying to be more confident, it's like confidence is your goal. You want to be more confident. So you have to do little things to get you more confident. Strike up a conversation with a stranger for 2 minutes. It's going to help you get more confident. Say something more than just, hey, or good when someone's like, how are you? Or hi. It's going to help you build up that confidence. Tarun, what's an analogy that you can kind of think of maybe to make sense of it? Not everybody is trying to deadlift 400 pounds.
It's sort of like if you're flying somewhere. So it's like if you go to like Africa or somewhere.
All right.
And it's like on the way there, you're gonna go through like probably multiple flights. Like, if you live in like California, like to New Jersey, and then a full flight to Africa, and sort of like that experience is better than just I want to get to Africa. It's sort of like the travel there is like the learning process, but the grade itself is sort of just like the destination.
I love that, Tarun. The journey is important. Mason, can you think of any analogies that make this make sense for you?
When I think that, I think of like trying to be in the moment and not worrying about the future. Like, for example, like if you are like if you're traveling somewhere, I'm gonna build off of what Tarun is saying, or not traveling. Like if you have to go somewhere for work. Like say you have to study in Italy, so you go to Italy and you get there, and on the way home you get stuck in another country, like because you have two flights and then the flight gets delayed, and instead of like worrying like, oh my God, when am I gonna get home? You go around that country and you just stay in the moment and you have a better time than
Mason,
what you have to do in the future.
I love that. I think like athletes call that like trusting the process,
Yeah.
right? And the process is like, let's keep working on these skills. Let's keep doing these drills, or like, let's keep working on this assignment or whatever skill that we're working on within the assignment. And like, we'll get to that goal eventually. You can't just be like, yeah, we're going to turn this thing around. The Jets are going to be a Super Bowl contender. Well, that's the goal. Or if you're a Mets fan, you heard Stevie Cohen talk about like win a World Series in 4 to 5 years. But if he's only talking about the goal and never actually starts doing things, buy some players, invest in your farm system, right? Shed bad contracts. Like those are the things you have to do on a day-to-day. That is kind of living in the moment. Mason, I love that. Danielle, what about for you? What's an analogy that can help make sense of this? Because we're hoping that 4 different analogies, 5 if you count the confidence one, will at least get our listeners to be like, all right, this makes sense.
Full circle. So yeah, no, I was gonna kind of build a little bit on what Mason was saying, whereas he said stay in the moment. And what I was gonna say, and I think a lot of high school students, especially upperclassmen, like juniors and seniors, think a lot about the future. Say like, if I do this now, here are all of these skills I could build up on now. This is what will help me get to like my career, for example. So like for me personally, I love musical theater. Acting has always been kind of my thing. However, it's not the most stable career path, and while if I can pursue it, I definitely would or will. But another thing I really enjoy is psychology. But you see, the thing is, I'm not just gonna like take like AP Psych. I'm not gonna just take child development and say, okay, I got an A. I'm gonna do other things too to try and supplement that. So it's just think about, I guess, kind of like a marathon, if you will. Like you think about the end and what will be at the end. But like Mason said, you also have to focus on the now.
First of all, at no point has any student ever asked me what any of my grades were in any education class in grad school, or what any of my grades were in any English class from grades 1 through 12. Not one of you, but you trust my expertise. How backwards is that? It's because you've all admitted by not saying or not asking. Now I'm going to have a whole bunch of 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders like harassing their teachers. Like, I would like to know your grade on your history class from your 7th grade. The teacher's going to be like, 7th grade? That was like 45 years ago. I don't remember. But seriously, I don't remember. And I don't think anyone cares what your grades were, because if you don't have those skills that can help you, you're useless. That surgeon, the surgeon that aced his like anatomy class, good for him. I don't care. I just want to know that when he opens me up and then closes me back up, everything is where it's supposed to be and that it's working properly. Mason.
Especially now with like online school.
Yeah.
There's obviously a big part of it is people cheating. And if you think about it,
yeah,
if you're in high school and you cheat on every test you have, you get into a good college, and then you get to college things are most likely going to be back to normal, and you don't know a thing. Say you find a way to cheat your way through college, you get to your career, and you have no clue what to do. And I feel like if you cheat now, you're thinking, "Oh, I'll just get through this. I'll just get through this test, and everything will be fine." But you also have to think about what are you going to do in the future when you're not at home and you actually have to do stuff.
Oh, yeah. We weren't going to go down that route. Tarun, go ahead.
Also, sort of like what Mason said, I'm not going to say any names, but like I know people who
Drop names, dude. Do it. And then we'll publish. No, I'm just kidding. Don't.
like there's people I know who like have cheated on like big tests and like CAs and stuff over virtually. And so like my main motivation to like just keep it like do my work properly is like sort of like what Mason said. I'm literally not going to get a job if I just have the grade.
Yeah. Or you'll get the job and they get fired immediately when like that person dies on your OR, like in your operating room. Granted, obviously, hope that doesn't happen. Some people will be like, oh, that's too extreme. That's too extreme. I don't know. Cheating and cheaters, they get caught. Okay, so what made you want to be a part of this episode in particular? What's been your experience shifting your mindset from making it all about the grade to more of an embracing of the focusing on the skills and the process?
For me, I felt like this topic has been something I always thought about, like how, like it's very, especially at home, like you know that people are like sharing answers everywhere and they're cheating. It's very tempting to just like, let me just search it up. But for me, like I feel like I just have that guilt of like cheating, and then I realize that like if I do cheat, I'm not understanding, I'm not learning anything. And I feel like if I don't learn anything and I get a good grade, it's not worth it.
Oh, yeah, totally. All right, Tarun, what about you?
So I mean, it's like for most of my life, I've usually like been like a good student. And so like that's for me, it's like because I'm actually learning and not just like having a marker full of answers like in my pocket. And so like I think like that's sort of the worst part of it. It's like if you get in trouble, like you know it, but it like you're not in trouble yet. Like that feeling in your stomach, it's not a pleasant experience. Yeah. So it's like if you cheat, you're gonna like, have that continuously, and that's just like not a pleasant experience.
Oh my God, dude! This sounds like there's like there has to be a story here, either for you, Tarun, or for Mason. I feel like both of you seem to have such like a strong disdain and such strong feelings towards against cheating and towards just like great work ethic, which is an amazing thing. But I'm just curious if there is like if there's a backstory here or some kind of experience that you had with cheating or with like the guilt associated with like not doing things maybe entirely the right way. Tarun, go ahead. What are you thinking here?
So actually in like kindergarten, me and my like best friends, like we didn't cheat, but like we always sat next to each other in tests and like, or not tests, but like spelling tests and like if you know your ABCs.
Yeah.
One time he like was caught cheating, and so like I just like witnessed sort of that aroma because after that like we were friends, and so like he explained like how that feeling was, and sort of that was just like sort of like PTSD for me, and I don't like want to cheat.
It's awesome. Danielle, what about you? Where do you feel like there was an experience for you at any point that kind of was like a turning point for you as far as changing your focus from the grades to focusing on the skills?
Honestly, for me, I think it was pretty recently because I honestly I'm still a little bad about it. I am trying to be better about it, but I just put so much weight on my grades. Like I'll get a B and I'll be like, what is this? Because I'm just really a try hard when it comes to school, especially stuff that people have told me I'm good at. But recently I stayed up really late. I think this was like freshman year, and I'm a sophomore, so it was like freshman year, one night I just stayed up like ridiculously late getting ahead on stuff I really didn't need to.
Mm.
And I spoke to one of my friends the next morning and he was like, why? Like, why did you do that to yourself? Like, take a nap. Like, I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, I'm not reading the quantic formula or whatever it was I was doing by staying up till 3 a.m. working on it, like that's something, it's a skill. And I was staying up late because I was focusing on the grade, because there's a point where if you get really busy and you're not at your most productive point, you may slip up on an assignment and, it may reflect your grade negatively, but that doesn't mean you don't have that skill. That means maybe you were just having an off day. Maybe you were procrastinating, and you also have to think what the source is of that procrastination, stress, anxiety, whether it just be general or when it comes to school, like when you procrastinate, you're avoiding a lot of negativity.
Okay, yeah. Well, look, I mean, I feel like we might be opening up a can of worms a little bit here, and this could be dangerous. But I think that what you're saying here is really great. Like, just because you struggle and you get a bad grade does not mean that you don't know the skill. I mean, and look, that's so hard for students to completely embrace, especially at this stage in middle school. But I really think like this goes back to the whole idea of you have to trust the process. And I know that that's sometimes a bit cliche to say that, but like it may not happen on the first shot. It may not happen on the third. Like learning can be messy, and learning is not always linear. So you may not see that you're actually improving. And also, I think it's unfair to think that you're going to ace everything that you do, especially when for some of these skills, this may be the first time that you're doing it. So of course it's going to be unfair to put those expectations that you're going to ace it, that you're going to get a 99 and that's going to help you get into that high school that you want or whatever. The first time you're learning a skill, there is a learning process. Okay, so Danielle, the reason I asked you when you thought that change started happening in 8th grade, one of the things that I have my students do at the end of the year is they do a end of year reflection essay. So they do 2 paragraphs basically.
It was probably you.
They pick one skill that they excelled in for the year, and they pick one skill that they struggled on throughout the year in my class. And basically, the quick rundown on it is they have to write about how that one of the things they have to write about in each paragraph is how that particular skill is needed to help them be a better person. So they are banned from talking about school or getting a job or how this is going to help them get into a good high school, which help them get to a good college. Ultimately, nobody cares where you went to college. So what I wanted my students to focus on, what I encouraged them to focus on, was how the skills will help them be a better human being, help them with their relationships, help them be a better communicator, help them be a better just observer of the world, even if they're that type of inquisitive mind. So I actually think that the change began to happen in 8th grade for you. And I want to read you an excerpt from your end of year reflection essay. Okay, so the skill that you focused on for your weak point was passive and active voice. Interesting choice. And part of your paragraph, I'm just going to read it. You said, quote, "Through this struggle, however, I learned more about myself as a person. I realize that sometimes I'm not the most clear with what I say. I will absolutely need this skill in the future. It's important to know how to convey thoughts in a correct way so there's no potential confusion with any point I'm trying to get across. I've had relationships in the past that haven't gone as smoothly in the past purely because of communication issues. Achieving this skill will help me in many aspects of my life, not only as a person, but for my career and future in general. Nobody wants to work with someone who can't communicate."
I said that.
Yeah.
Wow, go me.
Seriously, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So like the reason I asked was because I felt like you were I felt like you had like this change had like started to really happen, or at least I noticed it through your words back in 8th grade, sooner than you kind of, I guess, were realizing that it was happening. And I think that's the thing. Like the takeaway with this is that just like the skills, they take a while to develop, and sometimes we don't even see them developing when we're in the midst of it. It's the horrible analogy that's so lame is it's like you don't see yourself growing when you're physically changing. Like you don't like look in the mirror and just go, "Whoa, I look totally different than I did back in 6th grade." It's kind of like you look back on a picture and you realize how different you looked, or how different you currently look, but you don't see the changes as they're happening. And I think with learning and the skills, that's kind of how it goes. That's how it goes. Okay, so and I think what happens here is the students, when we become so focused on the grade, the goal, instead of the skill, grades are just numbers. And unfortunately, if the only thing we care about is the number, a lot of times students end up seeing themselves, unfortunately, as that number. And the problem with numbers is then you end up not being good enough. One, numbers don't paint the entire picture of a student or as a person. But then the dialogue that students start having is, I'm only an 87. I'm only a 72. I can only be a 94. And then that dialogue becomes very damaging because the student only looks at him or herself as not good enough. But if you focus on learning, which is a lifelong process made up of multiple skills, I think that it becomes a little bit easier then to look at just the grade as like, okay, I'm trying to get here as a goal. And if I do, I'm still learning in the process. So I imagine you're being admitted to a high school, or if you're in a job application, an interview or some sorts. And the question is like, name a class that you've taken and what did you learn in that class? Would you have nothing to say? Would you just blank out and basically just be like, I learned science, math things? What if instead you were able to have an answer about like skills that you learned, and then be able to address how like, and yeah, that's a skill that I need in English, or that's a skill that I need in science. But I know that in general, in life, in relationships, in being able to be an effective communicator, I'm going to need this to be able to do this. Just imagine the look on the person's face that is interviewing you, and how pretty much of a slam dunk that would be that you're going to get that job, or you're going to get that, that chance to be a part of that school. What that says is it shows such an enthusiasm for learning. Mason, go ahead.
I feel like when some people might agree and some might disagree, but in the long run, school is not only meant for you to prepare for a test. It's really meant to teach and prepare students for the life ahead of them. And when students don't understand that, they think that if they don't study, if they don't get a good grade on one test, it's going to determine their whole future. And that's not true.
Yeah, and like I'm not actually, I think back to all the recommendations that I've ever done for a student applying to high schools or colleges or jobs later on down the line. And for 11 years, I've never looked at gradebook before I sit down to write the recommendation for them. I'm always and I'm not the only teacher who does this. I think most of us are doing this. We're reflecting on your ability to acquire these skills and your application of the skills. And just, we're talking about you as a person in general. Nowhere in that conversation really is there room for us to say a number. We put in the number where it's like, what is he or she currently averaging in your class? And it's like, okay, here's the number, is like a quick way to get data about your ability to do the skill. But I talk about things like your love for learning, or how receptive you are to feedback, or how you're able to make meaning of the skills that we're working on, where it's more than just regurgitate the skill on a test or on a quiz or some type of assessment. So, Tarun, what are your thoughts?
So I think like the only reason they actually take in gradebook is so they sort of can comprehend your ability watching your whole year of classes. And so it's like it's like a short answer explanation to how you are. But even if you're the most arrogant kid in the world, even if you have like straight 100s, then they're gonna like accept you for like 2 days and then just kick you out because most schools, like, they also look into who you are because they're basically like raising you and they're like setting you up for success. Like, they don't want to, like, I mean, like, kind of like ruin their reputation, I guess.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of where we have to like circle back a little bit too, Tarun, because grades are important. The whole premise of this episode is that they're not the most important thing, and they're that students maybe should start to embrace, students, parents, and schools, like we should start maybe trying to embrace shifting our focus just maybe a bit more. Not saying that people aren't, but that they're not the most important thing, but they still are important. They still have value. I'm not saying get rid of grades as a whole, because when we're talking about just applying to schools or placement, like, we need to know that you can do these skills, right? We can't just be like, wow, great, you're a wonderful person, you're so fantastic, and you work so hard, but you're running a 62. Mason, you agree with this?
So what I've learned from like the application process was I saw on one of the slideshows that some schools, like most schools out of our district, they don't really look at grades for a huge percent of it. They really look at like that test that you take in your application, and that goes to show that grades aren't everything.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh yeah, I just want to say one last thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a lot of people, like, a lot of people are smart, but like they only do it for the school or for the grade. And so like a lot of high schools, especially like the big ones or colleges, they look into like your full year. So it's like on the initial application, they say they're only looking for like your first semester or your first like marking period.
love it.
But even if you get like accepted, they still like look at your whole transcript and ask for it, because if they see like you went from 90s and 100s to like straight 70s, they're just gonna reject you.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. You know why I love that so much? It feels like it's dishonest. And I love it because like I love the idea of like saying it's not going to count, and then like, yes, you know what, but let me see what that says about you as a person and your work ethic, because I am going to look at it even though I said it's not going to count. I love that, Tarun. Mason, go ahead.
Another thing with looking at grades, not just like the first marking period, is like you're virtual for the first two marking periods and you get 90s, 100s, like straight A's. Then you go back to school, like everyone's back to school for like say the last marking period or so, and your grades go from really high to just very low. That says a lot about you and how you probably cheated to get your grades that high.
Yeah, and the focus is then on the number and it's on nothing else. And then like, all right, great. What do you have to show for yourself now? You can't do the skill. So the learning process obviously is a process. That means that you're not going to perfectly get it right on the first try. Where have you seen, we're going to kind of combine these next two sections. What has been your experience with redos, retakes, revisions, and where have you had teachers that have kind of encourage that part of the learning process? Because this might make some fellow teachers a little bit angry if I say that I think to not allow some type of do-over, I don't know how to word it. I don't actually believe in redos. We'll talk about the difference in a little bit. But I think if you're not going to allow those things, then you are in a way putting more emphasis on the grade and the number than on the skill, because the skill is an evolving thing. Danielle, what's been your experience with this?
I was going to say, out of all the teachers I've ever had, you were probably the biggest on this. I've had a couple other teachers also be like, either here are things that, let's do. Maybe I could, do this and this could help your grade a little bit. And however, with your like assignment refinement, I remember a lot of people utilized that. And I remember looking back at this essay I was like really confident on, and I didn't do poorly on it. I think I got like a B or something, and I was like, that's like interesting. I thought I did a little better. And I remember rereading it and being like, wow, I get grammar. Who are you? Just helpful things like that. And I think it's so helpful when teachers do that because, I mean, yes, the grade itself is being improved, and that's really what feeds a lot of people's egos and or I guess confidence and what have you. But also, you're still improving. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Because it's all like if we're focusing on the skill, it's about just getting better.
When teachers allow you to those revisions and retakes, it's not only helping you understand what you didn't understand priorly, but it's also helping the teacher understand like maybe what they have to teach, not better, but like emphasize more, so that in the future students will be able to succeed in it rather than like succeed on the first trial rather than having to retake it or do revisions.
Interesting. I'm almost kind of hearing the way I'm hearing or processing some of that, Mason, is like, if I give you another chance to do something and then we meet, we conference, and then like you do it again and like you're still struggling with it, I wonder how much of it is like on me.
I feel like it, in some cases, does put the focus a little bit on the grade because, sometimes you are going to be boosting someone's grade on like an essay or whatever it may be. However, regardless of whether or not the student's grade raises, they are still improving in the skill. So I think it's a little bit more about the student's mindset. Like, are they going to be trying to do this refinement for the skill or for the grade? If they're doing it for the skill, the grade's probably going to end up being better because they're probably going to be paying more mind to things they should be.
I love that.
I mean, if they are focusing on the grade, it's still very possible that they could get, a lot of those points that they wanted. But, even if they are focusing on the grade, they are still by default learning that skill again, and they don't even realize it. So that's very smart. I could see that's what you were intending.
Danielle, you have such great perspective and intuition on this after a year of obviously seeing that happening. Because sure, if and there are students who are just like, I don't care about any of this nonsense, reflection and making my work better. If I could get up to 14 points on my essay, joke's on him. And I'm like, listen, joke's on you, because you're going to reflect and you're going to go through and like make changes to every comment I've left you and then categorize it based on the rubric, which is double reflection, because now you're starting to understand what skill out of those 6 that are on the rubric you struggle with the most. And then you start realizing, oh, snap, I'm having a lot of trouble with organization. You may not even realize it consciously, but it's happening. And Danielle, I love that you recognize that. Tarun.
So last year, I'm not going to say the teacher's name because they had like a different way of teaching.
It's all good.
Yeah. And so every test, like no matter what you got, you were allowed to redo it. And so like one day you just came to extra help and you did the test again, and he just took whatever higher grade you had. And I made use of it, but like, I didn't really think it was like a great way to like show how you improved, because if you're just taking the better grade, then like, if you think you did, like if you got a 70 on the first test and you got like a 10 on the next test, I think you should be taking the 10 because you've been given the opportunity to like show that you can improve, but you haven't made use of it. So if you think you're improving is just getting a 10, then I think you should just like go with the 10.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think also like if you're going to take the same assessment again, look, and I understand teachers who are like ready to fire off angry emails at me. Like I understand why teachers would just say you can retake the test. But for me, like, I don't know. I feel my philosophy is like life is very rarely going to present you with the exact same scenario 2 times in a row. It might be similar in nature, but it's never going to be like exactly the same thing twice where it's like, go ahead, redo that, try that again. Which is why I really dislike the word redo or retake. To me, it's more of like, it's show me you're learning, show me in like a reflection, show me why the skill is important for you. Show me that more than you just giving me the right answer. If I had to choose between the two, I'd much rather have you write a paragraph explaining why that skill is important. Even if you are BSing it just to get your grade higher, I'm still forcing you to reflect on why that skill might be important to you. And I'm getting you to think about why that skill might be important and how you can show growth with that. And you explaining that, there's the learning. There is the learning right there. It's not going, oh, the answer was A, I chose B. Okay, I'm going to circle A now. Tarun, go ahead.
I just wanted to say like one more thing. So
Yeah.
Before I moved to the school, I went to private school, and so there they didn't have like the ABCD or ABCD F sort of grade scale. They had like a 1 through 5 sort of development scale.
Ooh,
So
cool.
yeah, so instead of like oh, you got an A, it's like you demonstrated mastery, and that didn't like really reflect on you. It just showed that you just need more help in this. So in the future years you at the school or the future marking periods or semesters that you had, the teacher would sort of focus on that skill if like a majority of the class had a problem on it.
Awesome. I love that. And I think that's in nature. I think what a lot of, us teachers do in general, right?
So I just wanted to say that like when you do those revisions, you're looking at the comments and you're seeing what you did wrong. But then some teachers, unlike Mr. Ancona,
Oh,
they
stop it.
comment the negatives. And I feel like when teachers don't like comment anything on stuff that you do well on, like you feel like you see all the bad stuff about it and you don't realize like you have some strengths.
Yeah. I think you have to hear positives because otherwise, how do you know to repeat it? What can teachers, what can students, what can parents do to buy into this idea that grades aren't the end all be all? What's something that teachers, students, and parents, what can they do to kind of buy in more effectively?
It's about now, but it's about the future too. So really it's about looking out for yourself, but also other people around you. And you're gonna, improve on skills, and that's really what it's about.
And I think, one thing, Danielle, that you kind of mentioned also in there was like the idea of keep the adults at home, keep them invested, keep them involved in this conversation, because then you can have 2 out of 3 parties, student and parent, having this conversation about the skills. And then if the teacher is the one that really kind of is focusing on the grades, you can get them to focus on just like, how do I get better at this skill? And then vice versa. If the student buys in, then student and teacher can have this conversation about, we're working on the skills. The grades are benchmarks. They're kind of like levels in a way that help us like understand how far we're getting, but we can still have these really great conversations about improving the skill, what we can do to get those skills better. Mason, go ahead.
Another big thing is having your parents, having your teachers, and having yourself all work together so that you not only, because if your parents understand that grades aren't everything and they understand that just by asking what'd you get on your test, like it just puts extra stress. If they understand that, then it will help you and your teachers understand that learning the topic is much more important than getting an A.
So I think, Mason, to help the parents get there, I think we can maybe help our parents out a little. Maybe don't let the conversation die at what did you get on the test. Let that be the beginning of a conversation, not what'd you get on the test? 92. Cool. Bye. What'd you get on the test? 70. What the heck happened? What's the matter with you? You're a failure. You're going to go live out on the street now. Bye. Let that be a launching point for, okay, whether it's 92 or a grade that they're not happy with. Okay, what were some of the skills that they were focusing on? What skills did you feel like you really were good at? What skills do you feel like you're going to have to keep getting better at because they're going to keep popping up, right? Some skills are a little isolated depending on certain subjects, but a lot of skills they're cumulative. We're building on these skills specifically. So it's like, where are those skills going to come up later on down the line? Or, how have you gotten better at the skill since the last time you had anything that assessed that particular skill? Great. You got an essay back from Ancona and you got this grade. Okay, great. You got that grade. How'd you do on your intro? Because I know that your intro was something you were struggling on the last essay, and you've been making progress. Did you make progress over here on this one? Look at the comments. Were they positive? Were they negative? Look at the rubric. Where did you fall in there? And I think that's one way to kind of encourage parents to be able to jump on board with this and have this conversation with their students or with their kids, whatever, their young people that they're in charge of at home, so that they can then get back to the things that matter to them, playing their Xbox and playing Fortnite. Because I think right back to that conversation I had with that parent at back to school night. It's like, who's to blame for this? It's no one's to blame. It's just we all have to try to figure out a way to get on the same page. Awesome. So I want to make sure I thank Tarun, Mason, Danielle for coming back for another one, coming back to Memorial, kind of virtually. You guys were so amazing, so fantastic. Nobody will know that this thing was broken down into like 2 different recordings, 2 different computers, 2 different files, 7 different files. No one's going to know any of that, which is great. Really great conversation about focusing on learning, not on the grades. If you are interested in getting on a future episode of the Monarch Experience, you know where to find me. Shoot an email, reach out on Twitter at the Monarch Experience or the Monarch XP. Make sure that you're following us on Snapchat at the Monarch Experience Podcast. You can find, I'm not even going to tell you where to find episodes. You know where to find episodes. Otherwise, how are you listening to this? That doesn't make any sense. Stay healthy, stay hungry. See ya.